Please enjoy this uninterrupted conversation as part of our academic integrity series brought to you by Integrity for Education. Integrity for Education supports your institution by unlocking the full potential of digitalization through the right mix of software solutions, strategic consulting, and sustainable implementation of state-of-the-art technologies. Learn more at integrityforeducation.de. That's integrity, the number 4, education.de. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience, and I'm back on another episode of our academic integrity series, sponsored by Integrity for Education. Speaking of, the CEO, live and direct from Germany, Thomas Fetch. Tommy, how you doing today?
Hey, Elvin, I'm doing fine. Shouvik, nice meeting you, and looking forward to a nice discussion today.
Absolutely. Another discussion we're going to have with our guest today. He's a first-time guest. Super excited to have him here. He is Shouvik Paul, and he's a COO at Copyleaks. Shouvik, how you doing today?
I feel like I'm walking into a boxing match right now. What a great intro. You might have the wrong job here, Elvin. Great to be here. Thank you for having me on the show. Elvin and Tommy, great to meet you.
No, and you know what? I got to say, now you're in the wonderful world of podcasting, so you can talk about your podcast later on, and I love that. So you get it. You know what it's like to be a host and a podcaster, and so I really appreciate that comment. That's very nice of you. Thanks for being here. We know you're busy. We know, and we always appreciate people take time out of their busy day to talk with us, so thank you. All right, so Shouvik, let's get right into it. Tell us all about what you do and how do you do it.
Absolutely. So I'm the COO of a company called Copyleaks. If you're in education, you've been probably hearing our names a lot these days, especially here in the US. We recently, this year in 2025, got named number 153 in the Inc. 5000 list. And actually, Time Inc. named us technology, one of their in their technology category in one of the best edtech platforms. Also this year, and just yesterday, Inc. magazine published a new list, which had NVIDIA and a couple of really big companies, and we made that list as well. So a lot is happening in our company, and just to we have, just to give you a little bit more background there on us, we have two sides of our business. One is the enterprise side. There we work with about 450 companies. These include a lot of media companies like Bloomberg, Forbes, BBC, and then we have companies like Cisco, Accenture. Really, they use us from everything from understanding IP infringement, right? Are people taking my content and republishing it in a different language somewhere else? They want to find things like that. Are my editors, are my writers for my brand, 100-year-old brand, now using AI to write an article? What a problem that would be if, from a brand reputational perspective, if that were to happen. To things like code, understanding where is their code coming from, right? So code detection. We work with insurance companies to validate if, again, you get into a car crash, you upload a picture of the crash or damage to your house. Nowadays, they're going, was that damage caused using AI? So we validate photographs as well and other things. So huge side on that side, on the commercial or enterprise side. We actually initially build all these tools for the commercial side. And then we saw that on the education side, there was a real need for real cutting edge technology. There was technology available, but some of it was a little dated, etc. And so we wanted to bring enterprise grade solutions to the education side. And so on the education side, we currently work with over 500 institutions that are predominantly using us for plagiarism and AI detection. There we have very integrated and we're like preferred partners with companies like D2L, Instructure. And then we have integrations with, for example, Schoology, a great relationship with Moodle, Sakai. So the list sort of goes on. And there on the education side, again, I think we're trying to solve for AI. Plagiarism, I think, is like less so of an issue, and we can talk more about that later. But like, we're trying to solve for the age-old problem that I think has existed for decades now, but really using a very different approach to solving for those problems rather than just, let's look through some like academic journals, which has been done for like 300, the last 30 years or so.
So, congratulations on all the accolades, by the way, which I think is just fantastic. That's awesome.
Thanks.
So, tell us a little bit about you. How did you get to where you are? What's your story? Then I'll pass it over to Tom.
Yeah, great. Look, I have been in the SaaS space for a very long time. My career started in San Francisco. Now over like I'm old. I've been like almost 30 years ago. I started a company way back when, and like really in the late 90s, and that ended up having an exit. From there, joined another company here in New York. That's when after that, moved out to New York. That company got an exit. So the last 5 companies that I've been with all had exits. One went public, the other were private equity, and one strategic exit. So what my sort of specialization is in is really scaling a company up to get it to some kind of an exit, right? Specifically in B2B SaaS, by the way. I don't really do a lot in B2C. And so when my last company, and we had another company exit to Xanadu, which was acquired by Xanadu. It's like in the mid 2000, like early 2000s. That was my other like ed tech experience. And then I got into like media tech and other businesses. My last venture was called Maz. This was a media tech company. When that company got acquired, which was right around the time COVID hit, I, through a board member, got introduced to the folks at the leadership team at Copyleaks. We were a much, much smaller company then. Now we're headquartered here in New York, in Manhattan, but we operate in over 100 countries. So it's a much, much larger organization than when I first joined now, like almost 6 years ago. Um, the goal was again to sort of come in and really expand the operation out, and and a lot of my background, I'm on the business side, and currently, for example, here I manage the business operations, so that's sales, marketing, CS, biz ops, all of that stuff, right? HR, all of that. But like the goal is to really, with my background, sort of being in technology, bridging the gap with product, right? And that's very often, there's like that bridge doesn't exist because there's a lack of understanding on either side of how the other side of the operation works. And so I sort of sit there, sort of in the middle, helping bridge that gap.
Nice, fantastic. And by the way, I graduated in 1994, so you're not that old.
Yeah.
High school.
Yeah, there you go. We're all the same age. We're not that old, right? Yeah. Yeah. We're the new, it's what we call the new 20s. Yeah.
Speaking of being not that old, over to you, Tommy.
Yeah, thank you for that. Super ages, right? That's what it's called. All right, cool. Hey, yeah, that was quite exciting to listen to your story and what you all did, and again, what Copyleaks like achieved the last years is just amazing. So from that point of view, you have a few years you can look back into, and you have been through Corona like we all have been, and you have seen like the impact of AI on the educational world. So a little bit more focusing on academic integrity. What would you see like from outside in, your observation from your customers, maybe in education, but maybe even in other, like in the industry, for example? What is the biggest threat to academic integrity from your point of view at the moment?
Yeah, look, I mean, Tommy, I have 2 daughters, right? They're in high school right now here in New York City. And I see their behavior day to day, and being, as a part of the academic integrity side of a company that does that, I talk to them about AI a lot, and I'll tell you my biggest concern with the way AI can potentially be misused. And we all know, right? Like students are obviously going and using ChatGPT or Gemini or one of these LLMs. And yeah, they're the the reason they're doing that is obviously they don't want to do the work, so they just get an answer. Now the problem is if you let's dissect that for a second. What's happening is they are going asking a question and these LLMs are giving them the final answer, right? And now it's gotten even more devious where they're like uploading the actual paper. I don't know if you saw the latest um, Gemini update. You can take a handwritten paper with questions and it will actually write it in your handwriting and answer those questions, which is wild, right? This was like last week. Okay. So it's only getting harder and harder, but your question was, what's the broader impact? To me, the broader impact is if a student is now going and basically saying, hey, answer this question for me, it's taking away critical thinking skills. Okay. So we are actually unlearning a skill, right? It's not like they're saying, help me come up with ideas. That's a good, responsible way of using AI is give me some bullet points and then I'll elaborate. Here, there's just like copy paste at that point, or maybe they're humanizing the text afterwards or whatever, but you're unlearning how to think critically. Now, that's a dangerous future, right? Where you have a bunch of kids who in the next generation doesn't know how to do critical. There'll be a generation of great editors because the starting point is I'm going to edit this document, right? And you may be sitting here going, come on, is that really going to happen? But here, let me tell you this. We've actually we were talking about, us being a certain age. We've actually all unlearned a skill. I'll tell you what it is. When I was when I was younger, my parents would drive us to Florida every summer. And I would be sitting on the side of on shotgun with my dad with a map open. At any given time, I would know exactly where I am. I would know if I'm near a body of water, if I'm near the mountains. Now, I don't know. I'm like blindly following a GPS. We have all unlearned how to read maps, right? So it's a dangerous future if we don't correct this problem. And by the way, we work with a nursing school, and here's what we found. The nursing school was telling us that, look, through the semester, we're seeing really high grades. And that's consistent to what we've seen. Maybe the grades are even higher than what we've consistently seen in previous years. When it came to the actual nursing exam, they had the highest level of fails, of people not passing. What that indicates is people are actually not learning. Who cares if what they're using or not using? They're not learning. And that's a really big problem when it comes to the use of AI.
Yeah, so AI is that one impact, right? I just attended the opening session of OEB today in the morning, and there was one professor from ASU who led the discussion, and he brought up some really nice provocative questions around that. But he also said something like AI is he didn't say it like this, but he said AI is given by God, but at the same time right out of hell, right? So I think something in between. That's about it. So it can really tremendously help you to speed up things and maybe do the heavy lifting for you in some cases where it's really good to do, though. In others, it will just, what you said, and make us unlearn things and just take shortcuts wherever we can. I get that. So then your stance, like I would be interested in your stance then. Do you think I need to start a little bit different, but we have been through 45 sessions already. And we heard and learned a lot. And a lot of that, I would conclude, is foster the students to really help them learn, facilitate and guide them through the usage of AI during the learning process in order to make it more individual and so on. Sounds all pretty great, and there has been like great stories. I'm pretty sure there will be nice outcomes after all. But your stance on that, would you be more on the policing side of things, so really shut it down and then try to get rid of AI also like in the learning process, or would you be I don't know, more would you like also follow on the idea to use AI as a learning tool, but then close it out for the assessment situation, or what is stance on that?
Yeah, look, first of all, uh, almost everybody here in Copyleaks, we're like huge AI nerds. I identify as a nerd. Okay. Not like the 1980s Revenge of the Nerd guys. I think the world has evolved since then, but we're the modern nerds. Okay. So I'm a huge proponent of AI. However, we're proponents of responsible usage of AI. Look, we saw what happened when social media went ungoverned, right? It led to the world that we're living in. Here's a new technology that's come up and is evolving very fast. There has to be some guardrails. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a much worse situation than what we saw with social media. Okay. So, having said that, with education in particular, I think the future is it's going to like what is education? Education is why do you go to schools and colleges? It's preparing you for the workforce and for your future, right? That is going to 100% at this point. I think we can say with 100% certainty that it's going to evolve. It's going to involve AI. Okay, so we need to
Yeah.
be preparing our kids for the use of AI, right? However, there has to be education around good uses, like responsible uses, and then ways not to use it. Okay. And I'll give you some great examples here. We know, like, do you need to use like we went through this, by the way. We've gone through this before with the calculator, right? People are like, calculator, it's a short. When we all graduated from, when we were taking the SATs, you couldn't use a calculator back then, but now you can, right? The world's evolved, and we're going, hey, look, it's okay. Show your work, for example. I don't want you to do the nitty gritty stuff. I want to know that you know how the math problem actually works. It's the same here, right? Do you need to really go search websites and do the research? No, have something else correlate the data, or do you need to do all the Excel sheets to create the graph? No. Use it for the nitty gritty things, but then focus your time on the analysis, not the data gathering, for example, right? So there's a lot of really good uses for AI, right? If English is your second language, there's ways to use AI to help you, for example, right? If you have a learning disability, there's a huge advantage to using AI.
Yeah.
However, coming back to like the misuses, which we need to, you asked the question about policing. Look, nobody in tech got in, woke up in the morning and said, I want to be a police. We would have become cops, right? We wanted to build tools that help people, right? And that particularly help students because they are our future. And so with this, the policing it's not policing, it's actually let's educate students about some of the dangers of using AI in the wrong way. Now, while we're hearing people say these days, and all my kids hear is, you shouldn't be using ChatGPT because it's a shortcut to doing your homework. Fine, that might be one of the reasons, but actually that's not the primary concern. And let me explain to you what I think is the primary concern. Okay, let's go back. Since we're on this 80s theme, 90s theme, let's go back in time for a second. We all used to go to a Tower Records to buy our music, right? Okay? And then Napster came out, right? Now, from personal experience, the reason I used Napster was not because it was free. I think it was an added benefit that it was free. The real reason we all jumped on that Napster bandwagon was because I no longer had to go Tower Records, put on a headphone that 10 other people have worn that day, listen to a music, buy the CD where I had one song that I truly wanted. Here came this magical tool. In a matter of seconds, I was able to listen to it in the convenience of my home, right? And pick and curate the CD collection that I wanted, right? That was the reason. It was convenience, okay? Same with, LimeWire comes out. I'm downloading, we're all downloading movies and all this stuff. Then what happened? What happened is none of us really realized like what some of the dangers were. There was viruses, there was piracy. It was the music industry, the movie industry. They had to spend billions of dollars educating us, right? You remember that we had we saw the campaigns, right, about the dangers of doing this. Okay, there are real dangers to using AI in a irresponsible way, and let me tell you about a few of these. Number one, AI at this point, right? It's First of all, in the early days, what AI was basically doing, AI is like a DJ. These LLMs are like a DJ. All right. They're not writing a paper. They're basically going out there. They're saying, I'm going to create something original. But basically, what it's doing is saying, hey, write me a paper on genetic modifications in mice or something. It's not doing the research. It's saying, who are the people who've written that paper? If there's 5 people, I'm going to go take stuff from there, remix it into a new paper, right? Just like a DJ saying, I'm creating a new song. It's just remixed. Now, if you know that song came from a song from the 1980s and 2002, and you can identify that. And that's the same, right? It's not real original content. It's remixed content. You can also trace it back. Now, we all know these LLMs got into a lot of trouble. They were getting lawsuits from New York Times to all the major publishers because of that. So if you were using an LLM back like even 2 years ago, there's a really high chance, forget that it did the assignment for you. There's a high chance that it plagiarized from somewhere. Okay. Now there's you can have gray area with, are you using AI or not? There's no gray area with plagiarism when it comes to universities and schools. You get into real trouble for plagiarizing. In this case, you may not even know. You knew when you were copying it from your buddy or copying it from the library. Here, you're like, I actually didn't copy anything, but you can get into trouble for it. That is, by the way, evolved. Now these LLMs, they're not going to human sources anymore, right? What they're basically doing is saying, hey, because at this point, let's face it, there's no question that hasn't been asked to these LLMs. At this point, it's not only answered that, probably answered it 100 times before, right? So it's looking internally. It's saying, how did I answer this question the last time? And it's reusing. In other words, it's self-plagiarizing itself, okay? So if you think about it, because writing a paper on photosynthesis, right? After the 5th time of answering that, there's no way ChatGPT or Gemini is keeping it original. How could you, right? It's just restating the stuff, right? And by the way, we build a whole thing around this. We can get to that later because of this whole notion. But coming back to the point with students, right? The idea is there's a really, really high probability that when you took that answer, and if you copy pasted it or even slightly altered it, number one, it's plagiarized, okay? Because AI is just plagiarizing at this point. Number two, as we all know, it could be hallucinating. We've seen these cases, right? AI will make up facts, citing sources that don't exist. In education, we see this more than just making up, just like citations. They're like making up citations that don't exist. That's problematic. And then there's hey, look, at the end of the day, students are trying to get the best grade possible. They are using AI to, again, complete these assignments, as I was mentioning, even sometimes using handwriting and all this other stuff. The truth is they're spending time instead of learning on trying to break the system. And it's really important to educate students that, look, you can still get there. We can get you 80% there, but 20%, you got to put in your own work, right? Well, we're doing it, by the way, as adults, we're all doing this at work now, right? I'm no longer going and doing half the work I used to do because I can use AI to do it, no problem. But you still have to have 20% of that time, that human in the loop, in other words, to correct things, to add to it, etc. Focus in on that, right? And that's where we need to be students. So coming back to your question, it's not about policing. It's about, we're in that Wild West days. We're in the Napster days with LLMs right now. And we need to educate students on the good uses and also the dangers of using it incorrectly.
Yeah, I agree. It's about AI literacy, right? So I think that applies for students as well as for teachers and organizations, so that they really understand what can and cannot be done. And following on not my question, but your response more, is whom would you say is your solution, your tool serving the most? Is it the students? Is it the teachers? So who is really taking advantage of what you have?
Yeah. So we have on the education side of our business, we have a suite of services, right? It's plagiarism detection, AI detection, and grammar. By the way, it's all one suite. We don't charge separately. It's just like you know how when you buy Google, you get a suite of software with it. It's the same with us. You're just buying Copyleaks, you get a whole suite of services. These services are integrated in through whatever LMS you're using. So if you're using Canvas, it's just you flip a few switches, it works inside of Canvas. As the assignments come in, it automatically gets scanned for all three of these things. Okay. Now, at the school level, they can actually at the instructor level, they can turn on the visibility to students or not. We are huge proponents of displaying this to the students as well, because again, we're in that teaching phase, right? We're in the education phase. Let them see. Like, I think there's a huge benefit of, hey, kid, you use AI. I know you use AI, but here's the thing: A, it's getting detected. B, I'll show you that it's plagiarized, right?
Mm.
And let's talk about that in a second here, because the way we are doing AI detection is not, oh, we think this is AI and it's 80% AI. Take our word for it. That is not our methodology at all, right? We use a very, very different approach, which is really about, again, highlighting what is the source for this, right? And there's a benefit in the student learning from that, right? Sometimes it's inadvertent, right? You forgot to put a quotation mark around something. Great, go fix that. And I think, again, in this Wild West days that we're living through in AI, there's a greater benefit to both the instructor and the student sitting together to figure out what went wrong and how to course correct here, right?
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and so our technology is available to both. Now, how people, we've seen a variety of reactions there. Some people are completely on board to give visibility to the students. Others are like, yeah, but wouldn't they just see it and then change their response? And, it's completely up to the schools. Personally, I err on the side of, look, most people want to grow and learn. You'll always have a few bad apples, but let's not penalize everybody because of the few bad apples.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And then, so I think what AI can do for us, we've been there, is that it automizes a lot and that it individualizes a little bit, or not, or maybe it individualizes education a lot. But maybe we can save some time at some point and then invest the time in one-on-ones with students where they really talk about what they did, even with AI, right? Why not talk about it and maybe just explain how I came up with the prompt and how the result came all together. So I think, what would you
By the way, Tommy,
yeah.
that's exactly right. So someone asked me to like show like what is the future? What do you think is future? By the way, none of us know. I don't know. I don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow in AI. It's moving at lightning speed. However, in education, again, we can look historically, right? We were talking about calculators before, right? With calculators, what we saw was when there was broad acceptance of it. We said, no problem, just show your work. So what's the equivalent of showing your work here? The equivalent might be, again, I'm not saying this is what it is. The equivalent might be show your prompts. Why?
Mm.
Because if you just say, write me a paper, write me a book report on Huckleberry Finn. Okay. What it's going to write is something very generic, right? Which again, you're going to find it everywhere. Okay. That's going to be super generic. To get to something truly worthwhile and interesting, you would have to say, great. In the first paragraph, when I read the chapter 2, it mentioned this happened. Include something from that. In the next paragraph, include his relationship with XYZ. Like, in other words, you would have had to have read that book in order to give these prompts, which create an output that is original and that's unique to you, right? Showing that might get you there. I'm not saying this is the future. I'm just saying this is a potential. If you as a professor are going, I'm okay. The future is using AI. I'm okay with them. Do I really care if the student wants to take a paper and put it into bullet points using AI? What do I care? Or if English isn't their first language, they want to use AI to polish it up. Do I really care? Maybe not. But what I care about is it an original thought, right? And using prompts might be a way to do that, of showing your work.
Yeah, and interesting. Yeah, I agree. I see it. I see it the same way. So, I yesterday heard a nice saying is, when you are a smart person, AI will make you much more much smarter, right? While if you are not such a smart person, AI doesn't do anything to you, but you just can pretend you are a smart person. So I think AI doesn't fix the problem, right? It's not a tool, right? It's a technology, first of all, that can be used like the one or the other way. So yeah, I agree to that 100%. All
That
right.
statement you just made, by the way, it's really supported by social media, if you think about it.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. And having 3 kids like in that age, you see where things like can go, and yeah, I think we get plenty of not so good examples. Elvin, I would give back to you. I think we already discussed a long time, so I don't want to overstretch it.
Awesome. Great conversation. All right.
I do, Alvin, want to talk about how to, if
Okay.
you don't mind, I want to talk about one thing, and that's the
Go ahead.
approach to, so a question I get a lot is, and again, because we work with such large organizations, right, we get to test this at very high volume. On the education side, there's a lot of distrust around AI detection. Okay.
Mm,
And I'm going to tell you what's caused that distrust. Part of it has been that, you have one big player that a lot of people use, and they came out to market with a solution which had a fairly high false positive rate. Number one, I think it was like a 5-6% false positive rate. That's challenging. If you have a class of 100 students, you're falsely accusing 5 to 6 of them. Like that's not a good out the gate solution in general. But like, in addition to that, the solution was, hey, I'm just going to tell you if this is AI or not, right? Take my word for it. Now, the problem with that, I'm sure you guys have seen some of these headlines. You go out with a solution like that. You're sitting there with a student in some academic integrity office saying, hey, look, I'm accusing you of using AI. And the student's going, no, I didn't. And it's your word against mine at that point. There is, and the reason this never came up before is because when it was plagiarism, you could say, you see this, what you wrote, it matches this over here, or is very similar to this over here. That's why it was never an issue, right? So
right.
that has led to a lot of distrust. The second thing that's led to a lot of distrust is truly some people will say, hey, I'm going to show you something. I wrote this myself. Like, I'm the professor. I wrote this myself. And it's saying that it's AI, right? And I'm going to tell you why that happens. When uh, AI got launched, there was a need to detect if something was written by AI or not. So the way you do that is you find patterns in the writing. You ever read a LinkedIn post or a Reddit post, you're like, I think this is written by AI. Even as humans, we can now tell that there's a pattern. So it's using a scientific methodology to identify if that pattern actually exists. And it does that very accurately. We have a tool that does that, by the way, and it does it very, very accurately. Okay. It does it a little too accurately. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. The problem is the world in the last couple of years has also evolved, right? So for example, when you go into Gmail, when you go into, your Word docs or whatever else, when you use Grammarly, it'll say, do you want me to polish this text? Do you want me to rewrite this text? The second you hit that button, it's using AI not to correct the grammar. It's using AI to rewrite the whole thing. In the case of Grammarly, their underbelly is actually OpenAI. They're using OpenAI to do this ChatGPT. So when you use a detector, right, it'll correctly identify that as written by AI, right? So someone's going, I know I wrote the original piece, but it's showing up as AI. Why? Because they probably hit that button or whatever else to polish the text, which in the world that we're living in today, I think what we've come to is, again, do I really care if this student used polished the text or something? Like, I don't care. I just want to know that it's their original thought. Okay. I
The
just
thought
want to know,
process. Yeah, right.
is it actually original? So here's what we did. And I'm going to show you something really quick. Here's what we did just to explain how this works. So rather than, and I explained that, like, we work with a lot of major companies, and these major companies, they were like, look, we can't just take like, oh, it's 80% AI as an answer. That can't be it. We need high confidence. Okay. So here's what we did. We basically said, all right, we created this thing called source match. All right. And to understand what source match is, let's rewind back a little bit. Last month, I think this is from October, right? So whatever, now 2 months ago, Axios published a report which basically showed that for the first time, that red line, 52% of content on the web is AI generated. Makes sense, right? AI is writing more than humans ever can. People are getting these responses, they're posting it online. Okay. So what does that mean? There's a lot of AI content, and that red line is going to continue to only grow over time, right? Now, going back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Think about it. AI is at this point, like, if there's a lot of AI generated content out there on the web, people are taking AI content and posting it. Once they ask a question to ChatGPT, they post it somewhere on the web. What we said is, okay, in all likelihood, if you go and ask AI, write me a paper on photosynthesis, there's a really high probability that it's answered that question before, and there's a really high probability that someone's posted that answer somewhere else already. Okay. So what we did was we created this archive, a database, where we did two things. One, we said, let's go find all that 52%. We don't, by the way, have all 52% of everything that's ever been posted online. That's AI. But we keep adding more to it. So we're trying to capture as much of that as possible. So we started adding those to the database. We're talking about just like millions and millions of documents that were written by AI. The second thing that we did was we also started going to these LLMs and prompting them, write me a paper on photosynthesis, write me a paper on XYZ, knowing that if someone else asks that same question, AI is not going to actually go online to ask that question. It's going to look within itself first and say, have I answered this question before? And if it's answered that question even 10 times, forget hundreds of times, there's no way it can change it up enough to keep it original. It's going to probably answer it in a very similar way, if not identical. So what we then did is we said, okay, the first thing we're going to do when we look for AI is not look for patterns. Is it written by AI? We're going to see if AI has actually answered this question before, because that's definitive proof. So now what we do is we will look in this database, we will say, has this question answered, or has something similar, that this answer that the student gave, does it already exist, right? And if it does, what you're seeing here on I'm showing a demo of like the actual product. On the left-hand side is the student entry. On the right-hand side, what it's showing is there's an AI source match. In other words, it's matching up against something in this database. In this case, not only has AI answered this question before, someone's actually already posted that AI response somewhere online. You can click on it and see these responses side by side. So it's definitive proof. This is going back to what we were talking about earlier, where if you don't, in the past, academic integrity officers never had an issue with these because they can show the proof side by side. We're just bringing that level of confidence to AI detection. Now, in addition to this, we have these other indicators, right? This is like those fingerprints that I was talking about that AI leaves. And even with this, we did it in a very much more like systematic way, right? And here what we did was we said, okay, AI clearly writes in a certain kind of pattern, right? So for example, attuned to these fluctuations, this cluster of words, attuned to these fluctuations, in a million papers, AI has used this 102,000 times versus humans have used it 14 times in a million papers. Again, not to say humans never use attuned to these fluctuations, but look, higher probability that this is AI. Now, if it was just attuned to these fluctuations, we probably wouldn't have flagged it. But it's the fact that in the realm of was also in this document. And that's used 9,500 times more by AI than a human, constantly evolving, dynamic nature. All these clusters of words are more likely to be used by AI. And we're saying, look, this is why we think this is AI. If your policy is we do not accept any kind of AI, we don't care if you're using it to polish text, that's not allowed. Sure, this will identify that for you. But if you're saying, I allow some form of AI, I just want it to be an original thought, then what we say is just look for original source, AI source match. If it's showing up in that AI source match database, that means that has already been written and published somewhere, and we can show it to you side by side. And then there's no question with the student. So this is our approach to how we're dealing with and solving for AI. It's a much more logical kind of way where, again, you still need the human in the loop. At the end of the day, you need the professor to take a look at it and say, is this something that I'm concerned about? And by the way, there's a lot of analytics on the back end of this as well. So the other thing what we found is there's usually a pattern with usage. If you are a person that uses AI, you consistently use it. So what we do is we will show you on the back end the actual pattern of usage. So very often I'll tell people, if you see it for the first time, it could fall. Like if it's AI source match, there's no doubt, right? Hey, I'm showing you the text. But if you're looking for patterns, it may be that number one, they use Grammarly, I don't know. Number two, it may be fall in a margin of error, in that margin of error. Look, any technology that you use is not going to be 100%. Ours happens to be 99 with the fingerprint stuff. Like, was it written by AI with the fingerprint? 99.8% accuracy. It might fall in a margin of error with anybody, right? But the way to circumvent that or to be more sure about it is being like, hey, if it's one paper, it could fall in the margin of error. But if it's all last three papers were written by AI, it's not in the margin of error anymore. Like it couldn't be like it fell in the margin of error all three times, right? So we identify patterns. So we'll show you on a graph three times in a row now, or last six assignments came in and it's showing this pattern. That's a good time to sit down with the student and say, what's going on here? And again, the student can say, hey, I am using AI to polish up the text. Maybe that's why it's showing up as written by AI. No problem. Then look at, is there any AI source match, right? Because if there isn't, that means it's an original thought. And yeah, they maybe use it to polish up the text. Again, what we're doing is providing tools and the data to have that conversation with the student to course correct if there is a problem.
This is fantastic, Shouvik. This is audio only. So where can people contact you so that you can show them what you showed up?
Absolutely. Look, we on the education side see, no joke, about 10 to 15 on the higher ed side universities a month switch over to us from someone else because of some of the things that we're talking about. It's our approach to solving for these problems, right? And frankly, we tend to be more economical than some of the providers in that space, mainly because I wouldn't use the word subsidized, but most of our enterprise side supports for some of the education stuff, and we want to bring enterprise grade solutions, the best in technology that it's used by some of the biggest companies in the world, to the education space in a very mainly because we want them to have access to these so that they're making the best decisions and training the students for the future. Now, having said that, we would love to have you, anyone who wants, see a full-blown demo of how this looks like inside of an LMS, inside of Canvas or D2L or whatever. You can write to us. First of all, you can go to copyleaks.com. That's COPYLEAKS.com. You can also write into sales, SALES, sales at copyleaks.com, and we will set you up with one of our reps will set you up with a meeting, and we'll do a walkthrough and go into the details there.
Awesome. Fantastic.
And by the way, our pricing on the education side is just based on the number of students using the LMS. Like it's pretty basic, pretty standard. It's nothing complicated. It's just like per head cost per student per year. So we've tried to keep it as simple as possible.
Awesome. One last thing. Mention your podcast because I've listened to it and I like it.
Yeah, well, yeah, great, Alvin. I'm so glad. So I also am the host of a podcast called The Original Source. I started this podcast really like a few years ago because I wanted to have conversations with executives, not just from education, from a variety of different areas. And one of the things is I am, as I mentioned, on the nerdy side, and I love nerding out with people, but a lot of my friends would be like, Show, can you explain this to me? Can you explain that? So what I do is I bring in guests there to explain how AI, something very complex in AI, and simplify it for just like for normal people, right, that are not as technical. Also, I try to bring in guests from a variety of different areas where to have a discussion around how it's impacting and changing, how AI is impacting and changing their specific industry. So, for example, I had recently the head of the compliance team for Watson, IBM's Watson, on the show. That was a really good episode. I had speaking of education, I had someone from Instructure come on the show to talk about how it's impacting education, and then I had someone from the government. And this person was in Obama's White House and was the head of director of technology for Obama, talk about how it's impacting politics. And so it's a wide gamut and array of like folks that come in, and the idea is to just have a very meaningful conversation around like the challenges. Question we get a lot is, am I going to lose my job in XYZ? I had someone from the legal industry, like what's going to happen to our industry? Addressing those kinds of questions, to being like really not focusing on like the negatives, but like how can you automate? How can you, what are some tools that these are like leaders? My last one was she was part of the senior level suite at Meta. She was part of the inner circle of Facebook, or Meta, of Mark Zuckerberg's inner circle. She's been there. She was head of their data team. She and few other senior execs left to form a new company just a few months ago. So I had her on the show. Very interesting. If you have a chance, check out the original source on whatever your favorite podcast listening tool is.
Awesome. We're going to put all this in the show notes because we want people to check you out. This was a fantastic conversation. First, let me outro my fantastic co-host. He is Thomas Fett, CEO at Integrity for Education. Tommy, thank you as always.
Thank you, Elvin. Thank you, Shouvik. That again, like, was so different to all the others, but it was so interesting. And thank you for popping up like the slideshow. No one can see it anyway, like on the podcast, but for us it was so interesting. So very much thank you for that.
You got it.
Yeah. And let me outro you, Shouvik. Ladies and gentlemen, he is your guest today. He is Shouvik Paul. He's COO at Copyleaks. Shouvik, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alvin. Thank you, Tommy, for having me on the show. It's been a great conversation, and let's continue to help folks in education and educate them. Thank you for the work.
Absolutely. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd. Thanks for listening to this uninterrupted conversation as part of our Academic Integrity series, brought to you by Integrity for Education. Integrity for Education supports your institution by unlocking the full potential of digitalization through the right mix of software solutions, strategic consulting, and sustainable implementation of state-of-the-art technologies. Learn more at integrityforeducation.de. That's integrity, the number 4, education.de.